The hum of the street lamp overhead was deafening in its constancy. Marcus Green crouched beside the brick wall of the empty subway exit, his phone plugged into the wall charger, battery dangerously low. He barely noticed the drizzle slicking his hoodie, only that the glowing screen promised connection. News from family, the morning schedule, maybe a moment's reprieve from the weight of the city. A sharp click behind him made his head snap around. Officer Trent Walker, badge glinting like a predator's eye, stepped into the dim light. His gaze lingered, unblinking, on Marcus's skin, on the charging phone, on the thin backpack slung across his shoulders. "What are you doing here, boy?" Trent's voice cut through the drizzle like a knife, loaded with mockery. Marcus froze, thumb hovering over the screen. "Charging my phone," he said cautiously. Trent's smirk deepened. "Figures. Always on the job of hacking, right?" He laughed loud, public, the sound bouncing off wet concrete. The subway's steel grate rattled as a train rumbled by beneath them. Marcus's stomach tightened. People hurried past, some curious, some dismissive, none stopping. His heartbeat hammered against ribs that had grown used to tension, fear threading through every breath. Trent leaned closer, the badge catching the flicker of the flickering lamp. "Maybe I should just take you downtown, see what you're up to." Marcus's jaw clenched, vision narrowing on the officer's polished shoes. He swallowed hard. The officer's hand twitched toward his holster, and then silence, thick, electric, unbearable, settled around them. The subway exit was slick with drizzle, the hum of overhead streetlights vibrating in the damp air. Marcus Green crouched beside the brick wall, phone plugged into a metal outlet, screen glowing like a small, fragile beacon. Rainwater traced his hoodie seams, but he barely noticed. This was survival. Battery, almost dead, meant no contact with family, no access to schedules, no brief respite from the grind of city that didn't care about him. He focused on the numbers climbing on his phone screen, the soft buzzing of electrons, the comforting, mundane ritual of charging a device. A click of polished shoes on wet concrete made him look up. Officer Trent Walker stood under the lamplight, badge catching every flicker. Marcus froze, sensing the storm before it broke. "What are you doing here, boy?" The word boy ricocheted inside him, a sting he hadn't forgotten from childhood. Marcus swallowed. "Charging my phone." Walker's smirk widened. "Figures. Always on the job of hacking, right?" He laughed, loud, public, echoing against concrete walls. Marcus's stomach tightened. He could feel the eyes of passers-by, but no one stopped. Some hurried, some paused briefly, curiosity or discomfort flickering in their faces before they moved on. Silence became its own threat. I'm just charging," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. Walker leaned closer. "Maybe I should just take you downtown, see what you're up to." Marcus clenched his jaw. He had faced prejudice before, but the uniform, the badge, the sheer entitlement of power made it different, immediate, oppressive. His mind raced. One wrong move, one twitch of his hand, could escalate. The officer's eyes were sharp, calculating, every gesture public theater. He tapped the edge of his holster, a subtle intimidation Marcus had seen too many times in news clips and whispered stories. "I'm not," Marcus started. "You're not what?" Walker interrupted. "Not a troublemaker? Not a hacker? Not a threat?" His tone was sarcastic, rhetorical. Each word hammered Marcus with accusation. Marcus forced himself to breathe, to slow the hammering pulse in his ears. The rain streaked across the brick wall beside him, mirroring the tension, the sense of inevitability. He imagined standing in that same spot years ago, the world already deciding who he was, what he deserved, without proof or consideration. Walker laughed again, the sound carrying over the drizzle. "People like you, always sneaking, always scheming." Marcus felt the weight of history. Every microaggression, every glance, every silent judgment that had preceded this moment. He swallowed the rising anger, keeping his hands visible, heart hammering. A train rumbled beneath them, shaking the steel grate. The sound was deafening in the moment, almost masking the officer's steps as he leaned even closer, voice dropping to a mock whisper. "You think you can hide behind wires, behind your little devices, and the city won't see you." Walker sneered. Marcus's voice faltered. He measured his words, careful, deliberate. Every syllable could become evidence, a weapon, a justification. Walker's hand twitched near the holster, a silent threat, an unspoken warning. Then, suddenly, the world seemed to pause. The drizzle hung in the air. People blurred as they passed by, and the officer's eyes locked on Marcus with that lethal certainty of unchecked authority. Marcus felt a cold clarity. This confrontation wasn't about a phone. It wasn't about him. It was about power, about assumptions, about the deep, unspoken rules that the city and men like Walker enforced daily. And in that suspended moment, Marcus realized something. The game was bigger than this street, this station, this badge. Something had to change. Walker smirked in waver. Marcus didn't move. Time stretched heavy, electric, waiting for the first strike. And then silence. Marcus's office smelled faintly of ozone and printer ink. The hum of servers a constant undertone beneath the chatter of colleagues. He slid into his chair, backpack still damp, hoodie clinging to his shoulders. The city's power grid reports awaited him, lines of code, schematics, flowcharts, but his mind replayed the confrontation at the subway exit, like a looping clip. "Rough morning?" A voice said from across the room. Jenna, his project lead, leaned against the cubicle partition, coffee in hand. Her brow was furrowed. Curiosity mingled with concern. "You look off." Marcus forced a smile, fingers brushing the keyboard. "Just a weird encounter," he said lightly, unwilling to unpack the tension. Jenna's eyes lingered a moment. "If you need to talk." "I'm fine." He pressed his fingers harder on the keyboard, scanning network diagrams, hiding the tremor in his jaw. No one needed to know. In the office, people spoke carefully, cautious of HR policies, bureaucratic lines, and the subtle gaze of surveillance. But Marcus knew the truth. The world didn't look out for him. "Hey, Marcus, did you see the alert on Sector 7? Another colleague called. Marcus nodded, immersing himself in schematics of transformers, substations, and distribution lines. Work was refuge. Code a shield, logic a temporary armor against the arbitrary cruelty of authority. Yet the incident clung to him like a shadow. Walker's smirk, the mocking tone, the accusation of hacking. It wasn't the first time someone had assumed his intentions based on skin color. And the city's bureaucracy offered no solace. Past complaints about Walker had vanished into the system, dismissed as hearsay or exaggerated. Marcus ran a hand over his face, pinching the bridge of his nose. "This is ridiculous," he muttered to no one in particular. "Everything okay?" Jenna asked again, voice soft now. "Yes," Marcus said, though the word tasted hollow. His mind drifted to every subtle sign. The sideways glance on the street, the hesitant cashier at the corner store, the neighbor's sudden politeness when he passed. The city itself seemed to have a bias encoded, a pattern that whispered, "You don't belong here." A notification pinged on his screen. He ignored it, eyes scanning transformer load data. Each number, each diagram, reminded him of the city's pulse and his quiet role in sustaining it. He had built networks, optimized systems, and installed redundancies. He controlled energy flow in ways most citizens couldn't imagine. Yet, outside these walls, one uniformed man's assumptions could override months of work, years of preparation. Jenna leaned closer, lowering her voice. "If it's him," Marcus held up a hand. "It's nothing personal. Just people like that exist. You can't fight everyone at once." She nodded, frustration flickering across her face. "But it's exhausting. I see it." He gave a brief, wry smile. "I've lived it." The hum of servers deepened, almost a heartbeat beneath the office conversation. Marcus's fingers traced circuit diagrams, imagining the invisible pathways of electricity that kept the city alive. Walker had no idea, not of his work, not of the skill, the intellect, the quiet diligence it took to sustain millions. That power, true power, wasn't a badge or a public shout. It was here, in code, in understanding, in control of something essential that the city depended on. A news alert flashed on a nearby monitor. Officer Walker cleared in previous complaint. Internal review finds no misconduct. Marcus's jaw tightened. A bitter laugh escaped him, quiet, sardonic. The system protected its own. Why even bother, he whispered, almost to himself. Jenna's hand touched his shoulder, grounding him. Because you do your job right. Because truth exists even if it isn't acknowledged yet. He nodded, absorbing the reassurance. Yet beneath it simmered an undercurrent of unease. Walker's assumptions hadn't just humiliated him. They exposed the fragility of authority and the dangers of unchecked bias. And in every glance, every hesitation of the people around him, Marcus saw the ripple of systemic oppression. As the day progressed, he moved methodically through work, checking nodes, validating protocols, scanning for anomalies. Each task with precision, each calculation a small assertion control in a world that tried to deny it. Outside, the city moved in waves of energy, lights flickering in apartments, street lamps buzzing over sidewalks. And somewhere in that grid, Marcus's influence stretched unseen, an invisible counterweight to ignorance and prejudice. By late afternoon, his office emptying for the weekend, Marcus leaned back in his chair. He stared at the city skyline through the office window, lights like constellations in human form. The subway confrontation, the mocking words, the public accusation. They felt small in the scope of what he built, what he protected. Yet he knew it wasn't gone. Walker's presence lingered in his mind, a reminder of the precarious balance between power and assumption. And Marcus also knew one thing clearly. The city's pulse beat because of him, not because of authority, not because of fear, but because of quiet diligence, intellect, and the stubborn refusal to let anyone define his worth. Tomorrow, the game would continue, but Marcus felt the first flicker of strategy forming in the edges of his mind. The cafe smelled of dark roast and damp pastries. Marcus picked a corner table by the window, laptop open, earbuds in, pretending the city outside didn't exist. He needed a break, a small pocket of normalcy before returning to the constant vigilance demanded by life in a world that assumed him guilty before knowing his name. Marcus Green? A voice called softly, almost casual. He froze. Walker, leaning near the counter, coffee cup in hand, the same smirk etched on his face. The casual tone belied intent. It was a predatory precision in disguise. Marcus didn't flinch. He took out an earbud and met Walker's gaze. Yes. Walker's eyes scanned the laptop, the bag, the small charger plugged into a wall outlet. Funny, you're always around the right wires. Huh? Always somewhere people might question what you're doing. Marcus's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Calm, measured. I work in city infrastructure, he said, letting the words land like concrete. I ensure systems run safely. That's all. Walker laughed, low, controlled. City infrastructure? Sounds complicated. Dangerous. For someone like you. His gaze lingered on Marcus's skin, the carefully measured tone dripping with insult. I'm trained for it, Marcus replied. Competence doesn't come from skin color. Walker leaned closer, lowering his voice. People don't see it that way. You think the rules apply equally to everyone. I don't, Marcus said softly. But they should. Walker's smirk twitched. He straightened, pretending to sip coffee, but his gaze didn't leave Marcus. The quiet insistence of attention was a weapon, and Marcus felt the familiar weight settle in his chest. Every bystander's glance felt like potential judgment. Every whispered suspicion in the air seemed amplified by Walker's presence. A barista approached, balancing a tray. Walker waved him off with a casual nod, his posture deliberate, intended to dominate the space. You're in public, Mr. Green. People can see you and judge. I don't care about your judgment, Marcus said, tone steady, eyes calm. I care about work, about my life, about the city I keep running. Walker chuckled, unnervingly light. City, huh? Funny. You're always touching things that aren't really yours to control, aren't you? Marcus took a slow breath, measured, deliberate. He had learned long ago that silence could speak louder than anger. I control what I'm responsible for, he said. Everything else is your concern, officer. Walker's eyes narrowed. Maybe I should check that. Marcus didn't respond. He closed his laptop slowly, shutting off the glow of the screen like lowering a shield. His gaze stayed fixed on Walker. The officer's steps were soft but deliberate as he approached the exit, every movement calculated to unsettle, to intimidate. Outside, the drizzle had stopped. The city reflected neon puddles, distorted, shimmering. Marcus followed Walker through the glass, noting every gesture, every casual glance aimed to remind him of assumed guilt. Walker lingered near the street corner, hands tucked into his jacket, pretending to sip coffee, eyes fixed on Marcus as if the world were a stage and Marcus an actor playing the wrong role. He noticed a passerby glance at them, uncertainty flickering in her expression before she hurried on. Another couple hesitated at the crosswalk, exchanging a brief look, silent complicity in the background of tension. The city breathed judgment silently, like an audience unwilling to intervene. Marcus felt a pulse of anger, but he did not act on it. He walked past the cafe door slowly, letting Walker see the control he wielded in restraint. His steps were deliberate, measured, echoing a quiet assertion. He would not rise to bait. He would not justify assumptions with reactions. "Watch yourself, Green," Walker called softly, the tone like a knife hidden in silk. "People like you, they always slip through, but not always." Marcus didn't answer. His chest tightened. A familiar rhythm of fear and fury mingled together. He understood Walker's method. Small escalations, constant reminders of potential danger, the whispers and glances that chipped away at confidence. The threat was both visible and invisible, structural, embedded in uniforms in public spaces, in every glance that questioned him before knowing him. Once clear of Walker, Marcus exhaled slowly. His fingers traced the outline of the closed laptop bag. Control wasn't confrontation. It was preparation, anticipation. The city's veins of electricity pulsed beneath his feet, invisible but unwavering. That was his domain. The streets could belong to men like Walker, but the pulse of power, the real lifeblood, was his. And yet, he knew the whispered threat would not end today. Every encounter reinforced a lesson he'd learned over decades. Vigilance, strategy, and patience were not optional. They were survival. As the neon reflections shimmered off wet asphalt, Marcus's mind worked quietly, cataloging patterns, noting weaknesses. Walker's ignorance, arrogance, and assumptions would eventually intersect with Marcus's understanding of the city, its lights, its systems, its lifeblood. Tonight, Walker had the street, the smirk, the perceived control. But Marcus had the pulse, and soon he would show it. The rain returned, soft, deliberate, washing the city in silver streaks. Marcus moved on, silent, unseen, plotting in plain sight. The hum of the data center was steady, a comforting pulse beneath the fluorescent glare. Marcus navigated the narrow aisles between server racks, tablet in hand, fingers brushing screens as lights flickered in patterns only he truly understood. The city's power grid was alive beneath his fingertips, thousands of nodes, transformers, and circuits humming in perfect orchestration. He paused at a terminal, scanning diagnostics. A minor voltage fluctuation in Sector 12, easily corrected. Marcus typed a sequence of commands, each keystroke precise, each adjustment restoring balance. Outside, the city might see lights flicker for a second, a blip unnoticed in apartment windows and office towers. But inside, every correction mattered. Every calculation mattered. Sector 7 is stable? Jenna's voice called from the adjacent workstation. Marcus didn't look up. Yes, load balancing is optimized for peak hours. Redundancies are functional. All backup systems are live. She leaned on the edge of the rack. Sometimes I forget the scale of what you manage. The city depends on it, literally. He gave a faint smile. Most people never realize it. Most people don't care. They just flick a switch and expect magic. Her gaze softened. And some people assume malice before they see competence. Marcus's fingers hovered over the next series of controls. He didn't need her to say it aloud. He already felt it in every step, every gaze, every encounter outside these walls. Walker's smirk, the accusation, the public judgment. These were echoes of a system designed to assume guilt before proof. He traced the lines of the network like arteries, the servers like a beating heart. The city depended on these connections, and he was their unseen guardian. Years of study, late nights, technical mastery, it all culminated here. In contrast, Walker wandered the streets with the illusion of power. A badge, a uniform, and assumptions. Marcus knew the truth. Real authority was quiet, structural, and undeniable. Jenna's voice broke the rhythm of his thoughts. "You're thinking about him again, aren't you?" Marcus leaned back against the rack, folding his arms. "Can't help it. It's not just him. It's everything he represents. The assumptions, the shortcuts, the way systems protect incompetence." She nodded. "And yet you don't lose your head. That's impressive." He allowed himself a short, dry laugh. "It's not about keeping my head. It's about keeping the system running, regardless of fools trying to interfere." The monitors reflected the soft glow on his face, numbers and lines shifting rhythmically. Marcus imagined the grid as a map of the city's life. Streetlights flickering in apartments, emergency services humming invisibly, businesses running unnoticed machinery. Every flicker of doubt cast by someone like Walker meant nothing here. His control was precise, silent, and for now unassailable. A system alert blinked on one of the monitors. A minor security check. Marcus scanned the logs quickly. Nothing unusual, just a routine ping. But his mind traced a pattern. Thinking ahead, what could Walker disrupt if he tried? The officer was clueless about systems, networks, consequences. Marcus could anticipate his every move in the virtual shadows, long before Walker could act in the streets. "Do you ever get tired of being the ghost?" Jenna asked softly. "Every day," Marcus admitted. "But ghosts don't make mistakes. They don't provoke incidents that could endanger the city. And they see the whole board, even when everyone else only sees pieces." She smiled faintly. "Strategic ghost. That suits you." His hands returned to controls, adjusting loads, running simulations, ensuring backup paths were functional. He imagined the city lights in an intricate ballet, guided by his unseen hand. One misstep in a system like this could cascade into chaos. But Marcus knew every weakness, every contingency. He was the city's hidden pulse. Yet, even in the quiet mastery, a flicker of concern remained. Walker's assumptions weren't limited to streets or cafes. He represented a broader ignorance, the kind embedded in city systems, bureaucracy, and public opinion. And while Marcus held the grid, he understood the fragility of human judgment. One misinformed action, one unjust accusation, could ripple outward. A small beep from his tablet drew his attention, a report of unusual activity in an administrative node. Nothing critical, but curiosity demanded inspection. He traced the log, discovering minor but telling patterns, unauthorized access attempts, small probes that reflected a lack of understanding but not complete ignorance. Someone was poking at the edges of control, testing boundaries, assuming weakness where none existed. He leaned back, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Walker, of course. The officer's arrogance could not imagine competence paired with discretion. Marcus traced each node, each interaction, building a mental map of possibilities. Every action could be anticipated, every incursion countered. Walker would never understand the leverage Marcus held. Not in the streets, not in public, not anywhere outside the servers humming under his command. Marcus exhaled slowly, letting tension slip from his shoulders. He had mastered the city's pulse, the hidden veins of life that others ignored. He returned to diagnostics, to the rhythm of control and precision. Outside, men like Walker wielded loud authority. Inside, Marcus held enduring, invisible power, quiet, unassailable, and infinitely more consequential. Tonight, he would leave the servers humming, the lights of the city steady. And tomorrow, when Walker made another assumption, Marcus would already be 3 steps ahead, unseen but fully aware. In the shadows, Marcus ruled, not with intimidation or force, but with knowledge, control, and patience. The hum of server became almost comforting, a heartbeat beneath the city, a reminder that true power was silent, steadfast, and undeniable. The conference hall smelled of polished wood, perfume, and nervous energy. Marcus stepped carefully between clusters of professionals, tablet tucked under his arm, attending a city planning summit. The fluorescent lights reflected off sleek suits and polished shoes, the buzz of conversation rising and falling like waves. It should have been a routine event, a chance to brief city administrators on the upcoming infrastructure projects. But tension had already threaded itself into Marcus's spine. He hadn't expected to see Walker. And yet, there he was, leaning against a far wall, arms crossed, badge shining, smirk firmly in place. His eyes scanned the room, landing immediately on Marcus, sharp and calculating. Marcus exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of every bystander's glance. Board members, engineers, reporters, they all noticed the officer, some curious, some wary. Walker thrived in public displays. In Microaggressions elevated a spectacle. Marcus's pulse quickened, but he kept his shoulders relaxed, voice steady. Marcus Green. Walker called loudly, loud enough for several tables to turn toward them. The words carried mockery, accusation, and theatrical authority. Marcus's colleague, Jenna, stepped beside him, a quiet anchor. "Ignore him," she murmured. He nodded subtly, keeping his composure. "I will." Walker sauntered closer, each step deliberate, calculated to unsettle. "So, the city's little genius," he said, smirk widening. "Running wires and lights while the rest of us keep order in the streets." Marcus straightened. "I keep the city running. That's my job, and I do it well." Walker laughed loud, theatrical. "We'll see about that." A ripple of unease spread through nearby tables. Some attendees glanced nervously at Marcus, at Walker, unsure of protocol. A reporter jotted notes discreetly. The scene became a tableau of tension. The uniform against the engineer, authority against competence, assumptions against proof. Walker's eyes flicked to Marcus's tablet. "Always sneaking behind screens, huh? I wonder what you're really up to." Marcus kept his gaze steady. "You're welcome to observe my work. Transparency isn't a threat." "Transparency, huh?" Walker said, voice dripping with condescension. "Funny. People like you never show their cards willingly." Marcus's jaw clenched. He could feel the heat of anger, but he controlled it, letting each word, each measured pause, reinforce his authority without aggression. "I'm accountable for my work, not for your assumptions." Walker's smirk faltered slightly, a flicker of irritation hidden beneath his practiced composure. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Careful. People don't always let things slide." Marcus didn't flinch. Instead, he glanced around the room, noting each bystander, each potential ally or witness. Authority depended on spectacle, on assumptions, on fear, but he had strategy, patience, and control. The room's chatter seemed to fade, replaced by the unspoken tension of anticipation. Would Walker escalate? Would someone intervene? Marcus imagined the city beneath their feet, the networks he controlled, the pulse of electricity flowing invisibly, imperceptibly, but undeniably. That was his domain, his leverage, his quiet authority. A board member cleared his throat, stepping between them. "Officer, please. This isn't the place." Walker straightened, grin returning. "Just observing. Keeping things honest." Marcus let the moment stretch. One misstep could provoke chaos. He didn't flinch. He didn't retreat. Control was silent, not performative. "Marcus," Jenna whispered, concern sharp in her tone. "He's pushing. Maybe step outside for a moment." "I've got this," Marcus replied, eyes never leaving Walker. Walker's smirk hardened. "People think I can't see through the act, but I always see." "Then see this," Marcus said calmly, gesturing subtly toward his tablet. The screen displayed real-time city load metrics, transformer outputs, and critical alerts. A subtle ripple moved through the audience. Numbers that promised functionality, efficiency, and oversight. Marcus's calm mastery was a proof, a quiet counter to Walker's theatrics. The officer's confidence wavered, just slightly, imperceptibly to anyone not attuned to it. The smirk didn't vanish, but the subtle uncertainty crept into posture, into the edge of his gaze. Marcus felt the power shift subtly, quietly, without confrontation. Walker's hand twitched near his belt. Then he stopped, realizing the audience, the metrics, the undeniable competence before him. Authority can be loud, but competence is irrefutable. Marcus exhaled slowly. The tension didn't disappear. It never fully did, but he had weathered the storm. Control, he realized, was not about shouting louder than the crowd. It was about quiet proof, strategic visibility, and patience. As the meeting continued, Marcus's focus shifted back to presentations, technical details, and infrastructure timelines. Walker lingered near the wall for a few moments longer, then, sensing the diminishing spectacle, departed. Jenna touched his shoulder lightly. "You did well." Marcus nodded, voice low, steady. "It's not over, but we've gained ground." Outside the hall, the city lights flickered in silent rhythm, guided by his hand. He felt it. The pulse of control, quiet and unseen, undeniable. Walker had presence, but Marcus held power, invisible yet absolute. And as he stepped into the evening air, he knew the next confrontation would come. But this time, he was not just reactive. He was preparing, always calculating, always 3 moves ahead. Marcus sat in the dim glow of his office, monitors reflecting on the rim of his glasses. The hum of the servers was steady, a silent heartbeat beneath the city. Walker's face flashed in his mind, the smirk, the accusations, the public display of assumed authority. He leaned back, fingers steepled. Outside, the city pulsed with life, dependent on systems only he truly understood. Lights flickered in apartments, elevators hummed, traffic signals shifted, all flowing seamlessly because of the unseen work of his hands. Yet that same city saw a uniform and assumed guilt before competence. Sector 14 has anomalies. Jenna's voice came up with a secure line, calm but precise. Someone's probing administrative nodes. Unsuccessful attempts but persistent. Marcus narrowed his eyes. "Let me see." He pulled up a live map of the network. Traces of access attempts crawling across nodes. Each was minor, mere probes, but unmistakably deliberate. The signature was sloppy, almost amateur, but persistent enough to suggest curiosity, maybe testing boundaries. He tilted his head, mind calculating. "Walker," Jenna suggested. "I'd bet my morning coffee on it." Marcus said. "He doesn't understand systems. He pokes at edges, hoping to uncover weakness. But he's blind to the real control." He traced the path of each probe, noting IP origins, minor misconfigurations, and system loopholes, not vulnerabilities for malicious use, but openings for observation. Marcus's fingers danced across the keyboard, rerouting access logs, documenting traces, ensuring every move Walker made would leave evidence. "Be careful," Jenna warned. "If he suspects monitoring, he might escalate." Marcus's smile was faint, almost imperceptible. "He's already escalating. That's the point." He ran simulations, predicting every step Walker might take if he continued his intrusive behavior. In parallel, Marcus created virtual barriers that redirected potential breaches into secure sandboxes, perfectly controlled, observable, and non-threatening to critical infrastructure. Every touch, every attempt by Walker would be logged, analyzed, and used strategically. Minutes passed. The rain outside hissed on the window pane, mirroring the quiet tension of anticipation in the room. Marcus leaned back, imagining Walker, unaware, fumbling at the edges of systems he could never understand. "Every time he moves, we see it," Marcus said softly, almost himself. "Every action recorded, every assumption documented. He's building his own trap, without knowing it." Jenna's voice was steady. "You're not thinking revenge." "No," Marcus said. "This isn't revenge. This is evidence, leverage, and preparation. Systems don't lie. Metrics don't misrepresent. Assumptions and arrogance are exposed by truth." They watched the probes continue, ineffective but persistent. Marcus noted timestamps, cross-referenced with previous incidents, and began drafting a secure report to highlight patterns of harassment and obstruction. Walker's ignorance was now his liability. "Imagine if the city administrators saw this," Marcus murmured. "Not accusations, not assumptions. Just hard evidence of his misuse of perceived authority." Jenna nodded, understanding the plan. "It's not public yet. But when it is..." Marcus let the sentence hang. Power, real power, was quiet, invisible, and strategic. One public display of Walker's ineptitude, backed by undeniable technical evidence, would shift perception immediately. The man thrived on assumption, spectacle, and fear. But Marcus had control, patience, and data. Hours passed. The probe ceased temporarily, but the records were complete. Marcus leaned back, rubbing his eyes. Every microaggression, every public humiliation, every whispered threat had left digital footprints. The city's infrastructure remained safe, untouched, untarnished, while Walker unknowingly revealed his methods, assumptions, and ignorance in meticulous detail. "I think we have him," Marcus said finally, "not just for today, but for any escalation." Jenna's eyes were sharp. And then Marcus smiled faintly. "Then the city sees what really runs beneath the surface. The lights, the power, the systems. Me, not him, not assumptions. Truth." The rain slowed, a soft patter now, gentle against the windows. Outside, the city continued its rhythm, unaware of the silent chessboard being played beneath its streets and lights. Marcus's advantage was invisible but total. Walker believed he held authority, but Marcus had the map, the evidence, and the leverage to unmask the danger of unchecked assumptions. He leaned back, gaze tracing the server lights, a quiet pulse reflecting the heartbeat of the city. Patience, control, and precision, they were his allies. And the day would come when Walker's arrogance collided with invisible truth. Tonight, Marcus rested in the shadows, unseen yet dominant. Every probe logged, every step observed, every misstep noted. The silent power of knowledge was more dangerous than any badge or uniform. Walker had no idea, and that was the advantage Marcus would carry forward. The city council meeting buzzed with low murmurs, the fluorescent lights reflecting off polished wood and glinting badges. Marcus stepped into the chamber, tablet secure under his arm, mind focused. He wasn't here to argue, to shout, or to provoke. He was here to reveal truth, methodical, undeniable, documented. Walker was already present, standing near the entrance, arms crossed, his smirk just as confident as ever. He caught sight of Marcus and raised an eyebrow, misreading calm for submission. Jenna was beside him, quiet but vigilant. "Are you ready?" she whispered. "I've never been more ready," Marcus replied, voice low but firm. The council president called the meeting to order, and Marcus was invited to present the city's infrastructure updates. He projected load data, transformer activity, and live monitoring dashboards. Every line, every node, every redundancy was displayed in meticulous detail. Walker leaned slightly closer, trying to appear casual, but his eyes betrayed tension. He wasn't used to being observed, scrutinized, or questioned by competence, especially not by someone he belittled. Marcus began. "These systems are designed to maintain safety, efficiency, and reliability across the city. They are constantly monitored, and any anomalies are tracked and analyzed. Accuracy is critical, and oversight is continuous." He paused, allowing the room to absorb the information. Then, almost casually, he introduced a section of the report. "We've recently identified repeated unauthorized attempts to access administrative nodes, small, probing interactions, persistent enough to require logging and analysis." A murmur rippled through the council chamber. Walker's smirk faltered. Marcus continued, voice steady. "These attempts originated from accounts and devices consistent with officers of the city police department, suggesting misuse of access and assumptions about operational control." Walker's hand twitched subtly near his belt. The smirk returned force, but tension was now etched around his eyes. Jenna leaned in, whispering, "He's noticing the evidence." Marcus nodded, continuing. "We have documented logs of each attempt, timestamps, IP origins, and methods. None have caused disruptions, but the pattern is clear. Assumptions of authority without understanding, harassment masked as oversight, attempts to undermine systems without knowledge." The council members leaned forward. Questions followed quickly, technical, pointed, and directed at Marcus's analysis. Each answer he gave demonstrated calm, competence, and control. Walker tried to interject, his voice rising in the chamber. "This is absurd. I was just observing." Marcus cut in softly, each syllable precise. "Yes, observing. And the evidence shows a repeated pattern. Observations are fine when paired with understanding. Otherwise, they expose risk and bias." The council murmured, exchanging glances. Several members scribbled notes, their expressions shifting from casual interest to concern. Marcus displayed graphs showing probe logs alongside normal operations. Clear, undeniable proof of patterns that Walker could not justify. One administrator spoke. "Officer Walker, do you have a response to this data?" Walker's smirk faltered. He opened his mouth, then closed it, searching for words that could defend repeated, documented intrusion attempts. None came. The spectacle of authority he relied upon was crumbling quietly but efficiently. Marcus stepped back, letting the proof speak. The city depends on accountability, competence, and integrity. Assumptions of power without knowledge jeopardize the public, and repeated microaggressions, particularly when they target individuals based on identity rather than conduct, cannot be ignored. The room fell silent, tension thick. Walker's presence felt diminished. The invisible leverage Marcus had cultivated evident to everyone who could see, think, and process the evidence. A reporter whispered into a microphone nearby. "Did you just confirm misuse of authority?" "Yes," Marcus said calmly. "And we have the documentation to prove it. Not assumptions, not allegations. Records, patterns, and objective data." Walker's gaze shifted. Anger and frustration mingled with disbelief. He had been the predator for so long, counting on assumptions, bias, and fear. But Marcus had weaponized truth and competence. Silent yet undeniable. The council president cleared his throat. "Officer Walker, we will conduct an immediate review based on these findings. In the meantime, your activities will be limited pending investigation." Walker's jaw tightened. He took a step back, brow furrowed. His authority, public presence, and illusions of control were crumbling, all in the quiet, methodical way Marcus had planned. Jenna exhaled softly beside Marcus. "You did it," she said, voice low, reverent. Marcus allowed himself a small, controlled smile. "We did it. Evidence, patience, control, not vengeance." As the meeting adjourned, Marcus stepped outside. The city lights pulsed below, steady, unwavering, invisible to most, but fully under his command. He felt the weight of relief mixed with fatigue. The battle had shifted, but the war against systemic bias and unchecked authority would continue. He glanced back at the council building. Walker's smirk was gone. He had presence, but Marcus had leveraged control and truth on his side. In the quiet, hidden infrastructure beneath the city, Marcus had restored balance. Yet the cost lingered. The anxiety, the awareness of danger, the vigilance required to protect systems and self alike. It was heavy, persistent. Justice had been served, but resilience was earned, not given. Marcus looked toward the horizon, lights reflecting in rain-slicked streets. The city thrummed beneath him, a testament to work, patience, and quiet mastery. He had exposed abuse, safeguarded integrity, and maintained control, but he knew vigilance was eternal. And as night settled, Marcus felt it. The pulse of the city, steady and alive, flowing through networks only he could truly command. Authority without knowledge faltered. Competence, integrity, and quiet resilience endured. The city was quieter than usual, lights glowing steadily through the evening haze. Marcus walked through the streets, tablet tucked under his arm, reflecting on the council meeting's outcome. Officer Walker had been suspended pending investigation, his reputation publicly questioned, and his misuse of authority documented for review. Yet relief did not feel complete. The hum of the city beneath his feet reminded him that exposure had not erased the stress, the public humiliation, or the persistent weight of systemic bias. The victory was tangible but complicated. Justice had occurred, but it came with fatigue, vigilance, and a lingering awareness that the world was slow to acknowledge the invisible labor of competence. At the engineering office the next day, Jenna greeted him with a quiet smile. "The city council accepted your report without hesitation. Walker's career trajectory is under review." Marcus nodded, grateful yet exhausted. "It's not enough," he murmured. "The systems are safe, the evidence is clear, but the prejudice doesn't vanish. People still assume, still judge before knowing." She rested a hand on his shoulder. "True, but you shifted the balance. The record is now clear. His actions are documented, undeniable." He leaned back in his chair, letting the hum of the servers ground him. The city depended on him, and he had proven his authority through competence rather than confrontation. Yet the emotional toll lingered. He remembered the subway encounter, the cafe harassment, the public spectacle at the city event. Each moment had left an imprint, a reminder that even victory could not erase trauma. A colleague passed by, offering congratulations. Marcus accepted politely, nodding, but his thoughts drifted to the broader patterns. The small, constant microaggressions, the systemic indifference, the assumptions that others would take precedence over evidence, truth, and skill. Later at home, Marcus stared at the city skyline. Apartment lights blinked on and off. Streetlights reflected on wet asphalt. The pulse of electricity flowed seamlessly, maintained by his work, unnoticed and unappreciated by most. And yet, he understood the fragile nature of perception. One uniform, one unchecked authority, could still disrupt lives, challenge competence, and perpetuate injustice. His phone buzzed with notification, internal confirmation that Walker's privileges were revoked pending full investigation. Marcus allowed a small, private exhale. Evidence had won. The system, flawed though it was, had responded to undeniable proof. But the psychological cost remained. Marcus replayed the confrontations in his mind. The public assumptions, the whispered threats, the microaggressions stretched across months and years. Exposure of abuse didn't erase memory. It didn't erase fear or vigilance. It simply imposed accountability. He walked along the terrace of his apartment building, hands tucked into his hoodie pockets, gaze tracing the flow of light across the city. Resilience, he realized, was not a single act. It was continual, deliberate, and quietly maintained. Control over systems, mastery over knowledge, and patience in the face of ignorance were his defense against a world that often failed to see him fully. Jenna called later that evening. "Walk through the updates with me tomorrow? The council wants follow-ups." "I'll be there," Marcus said, voice steady calm. "Let's keep things secure and under control. That's our real responsibility." They spoke briefly about infrastructure improvements, redundancies, and efficiency, work as usual, but now with the added weight of exposure and accountability. Marcus knew that competence, not authority, was the truest form of leverage. As night deepened, Marcus leaned back in his chair, letting the city's hum fill the silence. Justice had been achieved, yes, but was measured, controlled, and tempered by the reality that vigilance never ends. Every light that blinked, every transformer humming in quiet precision, reminded him that his role, unseen and often unappreciated, remained critical. Walker's downfall was imminent. Public trust in his actions had fractured, his authority questioned, and the documentation of abuse undeniable. Yet Marcus recognized a broader truth. Systemic injustice could be slowed but not eliminated overnight. The cost of resilience, of patience, of maintaining dignity under harassment was heavy, but necessary. Marcus exhaled, letting the weight settle, and stared at the steady lights of the city he had built, protected, and now, in some quiet way, redeemed. He understood, more than ever, that exposure and accountability were only part of the equation. Vigilance, competence, and quiet mastery were lifelong responsibilities. The city flowed with energy, life, and resilience, and he, unseen but undeniable, was at its core. And somewhere, Walker would realize, not through confrontation, but through consequence, that authority without understanding, assumptions without proof, and arrogance without oversight inevitably falter. Marcus turned from the skyline, fingers brushing the tablet beside him. The city's pulse continued, steady, unwavering. And so would he, silent yet powerful, vigilant yet controlled, ever prepared for challenges yet to come. The morning sunlight spilled across Marcus's apartment, illuminating the neat lines of schematics pinned to the wall and the soft hum of servers in the corner. He brewed coffee, the aroma mingling with the faint smell of ozone from the monitors, and allowed himself a rare moment of stillness. Weeks had passed since the council meeting. Walker's suspension was still in effect, investigations ongoing, and whispers about his professional misconduct circulating quietly but widely. The external threat had diminished, but the internal vigilance, the weight of lived experience, remained. Marcus sipped his coffee, eyes scanning the city skyline beyond the window. Every flicker of light, every pulse of electricity reminded him of his role, the silent authority he maintained over infrastructure that no one else fully appreciated. He had exposed abuse, ensured accountability, and safeguarded the city, but resilience was not a single act. It was continuous, daily, and deliberate. Jenna knocked softly on his door before entering. "Ready for morning update?" she asked, her tone light but professional. Marcus nodded, setting his mug aside. "Yes, let's review." They worked through load analyses, redundancies, and contingency plans. Dialogue flowed easily, a rhythm Marcus had learned to appreciate. Colleagues who respected competence, insight, and diligence. Conversations about infrastructure became small reminders that not all spaces were marred by prejudice, that some places valued skill above assumption. Later, Marcus met a few city engineers for lunch. The conversation was casual, yet supportive. They discussed system upgrades, energy efficiencies, and professional challenges. He noticed subtle changes in their demeanor. Quieter respect, acknowledgement of his expertise, trust not given lightly, but earned. These small victories mattered. Recognition, even incremental, helped offset the lingering effects of public humiliation and systemic bias. Walking back to the office, Marcus reflected on his journey. Subway confrontations, cafe harassment, public humiliation, all had taken a toll. Anxiety lingered like a shadow. Microaggressions still threaded through daily encounters, and trust required constant vigilance. Yet, he felt a quiet pride. He had maintained composure, leveraged knowledge, and upheld integrity. That was strength, resilience, and dignity, earned through action rather than assumed through authority. At his desk, Marcus checked the city's energy grid. Everything hummed normally. Lights glimmered in apartments. Elevators operated smoothly. Emergency systems remained alert. He traced the network through live data, fingers lightly tapping the tablet, a silent affirmation of mastery. Control was not about dominance. It was about responsibility, foresight, and the quiet assurance that systems and people alike were protected. Jenna approached again. "Do you ever think about life outside this?" Marcus considered it, leaning back in his chair. "All the time. But life isn't just outside. It's here, too, in what we protect, what we create, what we leave steady when others would falter." She nodded, understanding. "And people notice, even if silently." He smiled faintly. Sometimes they don't. But it doesn't change the work or the vigilance required." The day moved forward with quiet purpose. Marcus responded to emails, reviewed system logs, and trained junior engineers in safe procedures. His presence was calm, authoritative, yet unassuming. He led not through spectacle, but through competence, patience, and an awareness of the weight his work carried. Evenings were reflective. Marcus sometimes wandered through the city streets, observing lights and buildings, the steady rhythm of traffic signals, and the subtle glow of infrastructure humming beneath the surface. The systems he built and maintained were invisible to most, but their reliability was tangible, a testament to quiet expertise and resilience in the face of indifference and prejudice. He understood that systemic bias was not eliminated by a single victory. Microaggressions, assumptions, and subtle exclusions remained, threading through daily life like low-grade static. But exposure of abuse, accountability, and mastery of one's domain created pockets of progress, small yet significant. Each documented incident, each act of integrity, reinforced a foundation for future change. Marcus paused on a terrace overlooking the city, letting the night's glow reflect his eyes. Walker's absence, the accountability enforced by evidence, and the smooth operation of the city's pulse provided a fragile but meaningful balance. Justice had been served, competence acknowledged, and resilience cultivated. And in that quiet, reflective space, Marcus recognized a truth he had long understood. Victory against systemic bias was never absolute, but endurance, skill, and integrity ensured that it could be challenged, confronted, and mitigated. Every night the city remained lit. Every signal ran smoothly. Every system performed reliably. That was his triumph, silent yet undeniable. Marcus exhaled, hands resting lightly on the tablet at his side. The city thrummed beneath him, alive, steady, and resilient, just like him. And for now, that was enough. The city pulsed beneath Marcus's feet, alive with the quiet rhythm of energy he had cultivated, maintained, and protected. Streetlights blinked in perfect intervals, high-rises glimmered with steady illumination, and the hum of transformers vibrated faintly through the sidewalks. The city was alive, and it thrived because of him. Weeks after Walker's suspension, the investigation concluded. Records, logs, and timestamps left no room for misinterpretation. His repeated microaggressions, unauthorized probes, and assumptions of authority were documented, undeniable and inescapable. The city administration released a formal statement, noting both procedural violations and the systemic bias that had fueled Walker's actions. Public trust shifted subtly but significantly, guided by truth rather than spectacle. Marcus stood before a council briefing, calm and precise. Jenna beside him. He projected updates on infrastructure enhancements, redundancies, and security improvements. This time, the audience was fully attentive. No smirks, no whispered doubts. Respect was not granted lightly. It was earned through competence, vigilance, and integrity. Walker's absence was palpable. No badge, no smirk, no whispered threats. He had been reassigned pending disciplinary action, and the professional community now knew the cost of unchecked assumptions. Authority, when divorced from knowledge and integrity, faltered spectacularly, but Marcus had not faltered. After the briefing, Marcus stepped outside. The sun dipped low, casting golden streaks over the skyline. The city breathed steadily around him, lights beginning to twinkle in anticipation of nightfall. He walked along the streets, feeling the subtle vibrations beneath his feet, sensing the pulse of energy moving through invisible veins of wire and code. A passerby paused, noticing him at a crosswalk. Recognition flickered in her eyes. Not his face, but the confidence, calm, and unspoken authority he carried. Marcus nodded politely. The acknowledgement was small, almost imperceptible, but it reminded him that competence, even when invisible, was recognized in subtle ways. Later, in the sanctuary of his office, Marcus reviewed the latest system metrics. Each node, each transformer, each substation reported optimal performance. The city's energy grid was stable, resilient, and secure, not because of authority on paper, not because of loud declarations, but because of quiet vigilance, foresight, and unwavering commitment. Jenna appeared at his desk, a faint smile on her face. "You've done more than expose him," she said softly. "You restored balance." Marcus considered her words. "Balance is fragile," he admitted. "But for now, the city runs smoothly. Justice has been served, evidence upheld, and integrity maintained. That matters." The room was silent save for the hum of the servers, a rhythm that Marcus had long come to trust. Outside, the city's lights flickered in harmony, a symphony of electricity orchestrated by his expertise. Walker's assumptions, arrogance, and misjudgments had collapsed under undeniable evidence. The spectacle of authority had been replaced by proof, competence, and accountability. At sunset, Marcus walked the perimeter of a newly upgraded substation. Transformers buzzed softly, and the subtle glow of monitoring screens reflected on his face. He ran a hand over the metal casing, feeling the vibrations of controlled energy coursing through the network. Control, he realized, was not dominance. It was stewardship, foresight, and quiet mastery. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself a deep exhale. The tension, the vigilance, the constant awareness of Walker's assumptions and the world's bias, those burdens had been shifted, if only slightly. The city's pulse, steady and resilient, mirrored his own sense of measured relief. Marcus paused at the edge of the substation, looking out over the city. Neon signs glimmered, apartment windows twinkled, and traffic lights blinked with consistent precision. Every light, every hum, every signal reminded him that true power did not lie in a uniform, a badge, or loud declarations. It lay in knowledge, skill, and perseverance under pressure. He felt it, a quiet victory, earned not through spectacle or confrontation, but through patience, evidence, and mastery. Walker's presence no longer dominated the narrative. His microaggressions and abuses had been rendered powerless by proof, competence, and careful preparation. The city would continue to pulse, unaware of the invisible hands guiding it. But Marcus would know. Jenna joined him quietly. "What now?" she asked. Marcus smiled faintly, gazed still on the city. "Now, we maintain vigilance. We build stronger systems, anticipate threats, and ensure integrity continues to prevail. Justice isn't a moment. It's a process. But for today, we can see the difference we've made." The sun set fully, city lights blazing against a deepening sky. Marcus inhaled the evening air, feeling the weight of responsibility, the relief of accountability, and the quiet satisfaction of earned justice. Walker's assumptions had failed. The city's pulse had endured, and Marcus, unseen yet undeniable, had restored balance. Tonight, the city hummed steadily, confidently alive, and so did he.